Okay then folks, I've got the latest action figure pre-order to land at MoDXtra Towers to share with you today. It is the McFarlane Toys DC Direct Page Punchers John Constantine figure. Just naturally rolls off the tongue there. And this was a pretty quick pre-order to come in actually. I saw it advertised on McFarlane Toys Instagram only a couple of months ago. Jumped on over to one of my favourite suppliers here in the UK, Comics and Cocktails. Big shout out to those guys. Made my pre-order. It was estimated for August, and here we are now in the first week of September. And, well, here it is. It's arrived. It's in hand. So, well done, McFarlane Toys. And certainly a lesson there for the folks over at Hasbro. Maybe they want to go and have a chat with McFarlane Toys' supply chain team and do a bit of a knowledge share. Pick up some pointers, Hasbro, because, yeah, that's quite an impressive turnaround. Now, you probably noticed, if you've subscribed for a while, that I'm pretty selective about my McFarlane Toys purchases, either the multiverse stuff or this now new Page Punchers stuff. There's a couple of reasons for that. I'll elaborate on a few of them as I go through, because looking at the figure through the window, I'm suspecting there's going to be a couple of my standard McFarlane criticisms coming down the pipeline. But in the broad sense of things, McFarlane Toys are a little bit too obsessed with obscure character designs from specific storylines, and there's a bit of a dearth when it comes to comic book accurate versions of characters. And further to that, I tend to pick up DC characters that resonate with me as well. That said though, John Constantine definitely resonates with me, so when I saw this advertised, I'm like, yes, I'm pre-ordering that. I was reading Hellblazer very heavily through the mid to late 90s, probably into the early 2000s, in fact. Big fan of Garth Ennis, big fan of Warren Ellis's writing, less so his behaviour. And Brian Azzarello wrote for a while, probably a good 100 issues or so I was with this title before I dropped off in the early 2000s. And he looked pretty comic book accurate to me. So, yeah, I was in on this one. So, yeah, let's take a closer look. You can see while it's the Page Punchers line, it's the design of the packaging is very, very similar to the DC Multiverse stuff. To my memory, I've not had a DC Multiverse box in my hand for a short while now. Got the big window at the front here to show off the figure and the goodies that are included. Got the sticker here pointing out that there's also a little bit of added value. One of the accessories that we'll be talking about a bit later on will be the included comic book. The design is the basic DC Direct symbol, the name of the figure here. Let's take a look at the sides. Very, very exciting. Oh, it does point out here on the side, actually, that it's part of the Black Adam comic wave. And the other side is just the open side of the window. Then on the back, we've got the front cover of the comic, digital render of the figure. Is it a digital render? No, that might be a photograph, a posed photograph, with a little bit of information across the bottom. Not a great deal of information there. And then on the bottom of the box, we've got all the legalese and whatnot. Right, let's get Constantine open then. I've already popped the tape at the bottom here. So we'll pop that like that. And then slide him out like so. We've got this kind of cardboard backing card here with the DC logo on it. Oh, that's quite good. So McFarlane Toys, quite often, because of the trading card and the foot stand, because they're usually in a little kind of plastic blister pack on the backing card, you usually have to sort of tear it off and mark it. And I like keeping these for use in photographs and stuff, and I sort of like the DC Direct logo there, so quite pleased with that one. That's a bit different. Then we've got the figure in the blister pack here. And then, all the stuff sort of packaged in bags, I see. Okay, so we've got the foot stand in a little baggie here. Just use my teeth to pop that. There we go. So that's the standard DC foot base that Todd uses with the DC Multiverse figure range as well. Then the trading card, same again. They're just replicating the model that he uses with the DC Multiverse stuff. I'm going to use my teeth again, folks. There it is. We'll take a closer look at that in a minute. I'll leave the comic book bagged for a little while, but there's your included comic book. And then onto the figure himself, and oh no, tie wraps! My nemesis! But what have we got here? We got like a little a kind of arcane-looking occult magic book, text, tome. Oh, right, and then we've got a changeable hand here, but it's got the John Constantine sort of pentagram spell casting sort of sign there, which is really interesting. Onto the figure himself, but I'm going to do some tie wrap untwizzling off camera. Holy cow, that was a mission. Had to run into the kitchen. You can use the really sharp scissors that we got in the drawer, but let's pop the figure out. Oh, that's a really noisy one. Oh, I missed the wraps at the ankles and wrists. Oh, dear. Uh-oh. Right, and here he is. Here's the figure, John Constantine, and all his extra goodies. Bit nervous about that ankle, actually. I'll have a closer look at that in a minute. Yeah, I'm going to go away, as usual, have a bit of hands-on playtime, get him posed up, play around with him a bit, get some photos taken. If you've been around, you'll know my routine by now. And I'll be back in a couple of days' time, once I've felt like I've had enough hands-on time to share some thoughts and give you the review. So I'll see you in a few days, but you'll see me in 3, 2, 1. And here he is then. Here is the McFarlane Toys DC Comics Page Punchers John Constantine figure, all out the box. It's been a couple of days now. I've been away. I've had some hands-on playtime with him. I've had him posed up. I've taken a couple of photos, switching about his hands to see how he looks with the other accessories and whatnot. He's had a lovely bit of frolic time with my man Batman, the Detective Comics 1000, the blue and grey version that I've got. Made for a lovely photo. I might flash it up on screen there right now. But if you're new around these parts, just to let you know, this is where I move into the review section of the video. And my reviews follow a very simple structure that I call the 3 A's. The first A is aesthetic. Have a bit of chat about the way John Constantine looks. The second A then is articulation. Let's talk about how posable he is. How does he move? How does he feel? And then the third and final A is accessories stroke added value. What comes with John Constantine that sweetens the deal? What kind of embarrassment of riches can we enjoy in addition to the main figure himself? So let's not dilly-dally around, let's get into it and let's take a closer look at John Constantine's aesthetic. So I brought John a little bit closer here so that we can have a look at the finer detail of his aesthetic. And there's several things that leap out to me that I'm very appreciative of, in fact. The face sculpt's pretty decent for a start. Good definition in the nose, the forehead, the cheekbones, the chin, the lips, etc., etc. So it's a decent enough face sculpt. It's not quite as detailed or full of character as, say, some of the face sculpts we've seen in G.I. Joe Classified recently. But I kind of don't mind that with this. I'm looking for a more kind of comic accurate look, and the sort of skin tone and the style of definition in the face sculpt seems more kind of comic booky, more illustrated, if that makes a kind of sense. So I sort of don't mind that. The paint applications seem perfectly neat and tidy. The eyebrows, the eyes, the darker colour on the lips, although the eyes do freak me out a little bit. The more I look at them, the more they look a bit odd to me. Now, certainly they've got the old side-eye thing that Toddy Boy likes to do with his figures. I'm not a fan. I'd rather he be looking straight forward, but whatever. Todd's not going to budge on that one. We know that. So that's the way that it is. But it's, the paint applications are neat and tidy. They're exactly where they need to be in the sockets, in the eye sockets there. There's just something, I don't know, I think maybe the eyeballs are too white, perhaps. However, overall, it's a decent face sculpt. Yeah, it's comic book accurate. It's got the illustrated look and feel to it, which is exactly what I want from the figure. So it's not quite going for realism, but it's there or thereabouts. The hair as well. Great detail and definition in the hair sculpt there. Really loving that. Nice little wash through it to give it some texture and depth, and to kind of break up the colour a little bit, but also suitably unkempt to suit the John Constantine way of being, philosophy of life. And, of course, perfectly in line with that unkempt kind of shabby look to Constantine, you can see a little bit of a 12 o'clock shadow on the chin there as well, which is a really nice touch. Very well applied to the figure. Doesn't look too out of place at all, so that's wonderful. Big fan of the trench coat as well. A key characteristic of the character that's just synonymous with John Constantine through the years. Again, kind of tying into that sort of shabby, unkempt, bit dishevelled kind of look and feel. It's kind of creased and got random folds. Like if you look there, it's all kind of creased and mashed up, like he's had it folded up, under the bed. Rather than putting it on a coat hanger like you're supposed to, John. But he's got all the nice little bits of detail around like the cuffs and the collar and the belt and the buttons and such like that. The belt goes all the way around. And all, again, really creased and, badly looked after, very much in line with what you associate with the life and attitude of John Constantine, very synonymous with the character. It's a nice colour tone as well. It's a single moulded plastic piece, but, they made a decent colour choice there. Very Columbo-esque, which is really hitting the mark for sure. And then it's the classic white shirt, black tie, grey trousers combo that is synonymous with the character again and has been for decades, The tie's nice. It's a little loose, rubbery piece on the front there. I mean, it doesn't really add a great deal in terms of the posing, but again, it's nice and detailed. It's not too messy. The shirt looks a right dishevelled mess. I mean, come on, John, get an iron out, mate. And then if I lift the tie up a bit there, you can see on the belt, nice paint application details with the buckle and the way the little strap's hanging down there. And then moving further down the figure, you can see, little tears, really creased again, that unkempt look. The knee's gone out on his jeans. It's all bunched up at the bottom over his shoes, and he's got his little brown boots on too. So all very much in line with what your mind's eye would associate with the character. I do find the little kind of worn out knee, it looks like it's in a bit of a funny place to me. Doesn't quite sit right, but do you know what? I'll let that slide. It's certainly a pretty neat paint app in there, so that's all fine. One thing aesthetically that often stands out to me with McFarlane's figures, and it's very much the case here with John Constantine. Well, there's two things actually that often stand out. One not so much, and one that seems to be a kind of repeated crime from Toddy Boy. The first is the kind of the way the ball joint wrist is. Sometimes the ball joints look a bit weird, but because of the trench coat and the way it comes, the sleeve comes over the top of the wrist a little bit. It sort of disguises the ball joint in there. So that kind of weird aesthetic quality that joint there normally has isn't present. But look at these hands. Todd really needs to do some work on his hands with his figures. They look slightly disproportionate, like they're a bit too big. You ever seen Red Dwarf? They always make me think of Crichton's hands in Red Dwarf. Like just weird rubber hands on a mannequin. Actually, there you go. If I put the arms up like that, you can see both my points around the wrists and hands, because the balls are a bit more prevalent if I bring his arms up like so, and you can sort of see that weird disproportionate element to the hands. I mean, look at that. I mean, there's a bit of perspective at play, but the hand's almost as big as his face. They just look weird. I can't put my finger on it, pun intended. The hands just don't work for me. I find them look really kind of rubbery and fake. One other thing I noticed as well, and once I clocked it, I couldn't stop seeing it, is that the thigh on the left leg here is a kind of shinier plastic than the more textured, more kind of denim textured style of plastic on the right leg there, and it really stands out. When he's sort of, you can see the difference there. You don't need me to bang on about it. You can see that one is far shinier than that side. It's weird. I don't know how that's come about. Overall, though, despite those kind of minor niggles that I've noticed through either fine detail examination like the thigh, or just sort of general McFarlane-y niggles about the way they do wrists and hands, for example, aesthetically, this figure is absolutely bang on the button. The thing with McFarlane is that the aesthetic is a more kind of statuesque. It's an action figure, yes, but it's really meant for finding that pose that you want and popping him in it and leaving him there on the shelf as a display piece. So at least that's how I view and behave around my McFarlane figures. I don't really use them much for photography or for like redoing new posed up displays. I kind of just find a display stance that I'm keen on, and then that's it, done. And as I said in the unboxing, big fan of John Constantine through the late 90s, the early noughties, and this figure is absolutely, right there, just very evocative of what I associate with the figure. The narrative of the figure is in line with the personality and character that I know and love from the comic books, and so it's a thumbs up when it comes to aesthetic to me. Let's now take a look and see if we can get 2 out of 3 with the articulation. And, you know, as far as articulation goes, if you've had a McFarlane figure in hands before, then you'll be familiar with the kind of the model, the book that they're generally using here. I'll start with the head. You can see that the kind of up isn't so strong. This is mostly because it's obstructed by the collar, but it's decent down, good left and right. And a little bit of tilt in there on the ball joint as well, which is fine, all good for the kind of, for those little statuesque style poses that I want to get him into. The arms do have a little bit of a butterfly joint at the back there, but obviously because of the moulded coat piece over the top, there's not a great deal of motion that offers you, but we do have the other kind of standard arm articulation where we can go all the way round, we can get him up into a T, we've got the swivel at the bicep and tricep, the double elbow, and the aforementioned joint in the wrist, which has got good swivel, and the hinge for forward and back. In the main torso, we've got the ab crunch there in the middle, gives a bit of twist, bit of forward and back motion. Obviously, again, the molded trench coat piece is your biggest issue there in terms of obstructing, you know, if you want to have him bending and looking backwards, but that's okay. And then we've got swivel at the waist as well. Bit crunchy, but not too bad at all. Moving down below the waist, this is probably where I feel like McFarlane is let down the most, aside from the weird balls in the wrists, because we haven't got a thigh cut and we have these strange kind of nappy pieces that often overhang. Now aesthetically that helps, that kind of helps the continuity of the figure there, but in terms of articulation and posability it's not a great help. So you're kind of forward, it sort of kicks out at a bit of a weird angle. The swivel at the top there within the groin is about the limit of your leg twist, so without the thigh cut there, it's not offering you a great deal of options. So yeah, and this nappy piece is very obstructive if you want to do some forward and back with him. You can get a nice flying kick with John though, if you wanted him leaping through the air, you know, booting a demon in the face or whatever, then it's within the realms of possibility. Then it's the standard McFarlane double knee, although again, obviously obstructed here by the trench coat. I can't show you the full extent at which it bends all the way back. And this weird knee pieces here, they just look strange when you've got the knees bent. You see what I mean there? It doesn't quite look right to me. So I generally keep him standing up, which I think probably most people would do with a Constantine display really. But yeah, these weird little knee pieces don't look right to me. And then in the ankles here and around the feet area, we've got those little ball joint things that McFarlane likes to do. Relatively well disguised once again by the boot cut in his jeans, which I appreciate, but you can still see a bit of a peak coming out there. But it gives you a good forward, decent back, a bit of rocker on the spot, although mine's a bit tight, bit of swivel, and then of course, like all McFarlane figures, Constantine can curl his toes. So, yeah, articulation is all right. I mean, it's not dreadful by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's lagging a little bit behind perhaps what I'm a bit more used to, what I've become accustomed to with some of the Hasbro lines that I collect, for example. The leg situation basically could be better for me to open up a few more options in terms of posing. I just find them a little bit crunchy, a little bit resistant to anything more ambitious than kind of what they've already decided for me is the way you should be standing. This has been an issue I've had with McFarlane for a while now. So, yeah, but it's okay. It's okay. There's a couple of things that we should bear in mind here. The first is the price point. These are, I mean, I think this guy came in at 20 quid. Maybe just over 20 quid, perhaps 22 quid, which is, when you think about the fact that some of the G.I. Joe classifieds I'm picking up are like 25, the Marvel Legends, I mean, some of those are upwards of £30, aren't they? Like your anniversary Captain Americas and stuff. So when you think about the price point, you've got to accept the fact that there's going to be a little bit less in terms of articulation. And the culture around the figures is different. I think the culture around McFarlane, as I've mentioned a couple of times on this video, is that they're kind of like discount statue pieces with a bit of articulation, as opposed to being an action figure with statuesque qualities in the aesthetic. Did that make sense? I feel like I just said the same thing twice. So yeah, I'm going to give articulation a thumbs up the second day, because certainly in terms of the display piece that I want him for, he's got enough to get me to where I want him to be. And first up in the accessory space, we have the trading card here. Now, the front of the trading card is just a replication of the comic book's cover, which we'll have a look at in a second. And then on the back of the card, we've got a bit of a character bio and a little zoom in on Constantine's face from that front cover. I'm a bit indifferent about these trading cards. Sometimes the artwork is really cool. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. Yeah, I'm pleased to own that one. This one, on the other hand, I'm totally indifferent about. Next, we have the foot stand, and this is exactly the same foot stand, the little circular black foot stand thing that McFarlane gives with the Multiverse line, as well as now, obviously, the Page Puncher line. Single foot peg that fits into the holes at the bottom of the feet, the DC logo, and yeah, do you know what? I'm quite appreciative of these. They're obviously fingerprint magnets, as you can see there as I'm holding it, but I'm quite appreciative of these. I wish Hasbro and other manufacturers would give foot stands a bit more frequently with their figures, because it can really help out, especially as I've said several times, I treat these more like display pieces. Next up, we've got the really juicy stuff. We've got this nice kind of occult book of spells with the pentagram on the front there. Nice bit of details, got some leathery texture to the outer cover of the book and the bindings and the symbol on the front, but then you've got the coloured kind of pagey pages on the inside. No text in there though, obviously intended to help us avoid accidentally casting any spells by reading out the words that are on there. And then we have the hand swap here, a splayed palm with a kind of glowing pentagram indicating that Constantine is casting one of his spells. And that's a nice piece there. Again, some nice detail in the spell cast there. It's in this transparenty yellowy orange colour, which is in line again with the look and feel of the character. So that's all nice and lovely, and quite again, as a display piece, a lovely accessory to have. The hand swap there is super straightforward. Just pop one hand off, pop the other hand on using the peg in the wrist, and voila, there you go. Although one criticism I do have is that little gap in there stands out to me sometimes, but there you go. So there's John casting his spell. And here we are then. Here he is decked out with his accessories. Got the foot stand on him. Got the spell book there. Got the spell being cast here to give you an impression. I think this is just, I pretty much ripped off the promotional photo I think that I saw knocking around there. One point of note, the book is very precariously balanced. They've the gap in the hand there isn't quite wide enough to make for a kind of clunk-click fit with the spine of the book, so it's a bit loose. But one thing I did wonder, actually, just on that, a little side tangent, is that they positioned the hand to look like a cigarette holding a hand without the cigarette in it, as a little tip of the wink to, the fact that Constantine was a prolific smoker. And then finally, of course, there's the comic book, which, yeah, pretty cool, pretty fun. It's kind of old school, like back in the day when you used to get the little small funny pages inside your action figure, so I'm appreciative of that. I've not given it a read yet. I can't comment on the quality of the writing and or the artwork. I got to admit the cover's not landing well with me, but that's a personal taste thing. It's not a criticism. It's still a damn fine piece of art. It just doesn't appeal to my tastes. But yeah, I think that's a fun little twist on it. Now, I've only gone in on the one page puncher, the John Constantine one, obviously today, but I hear tale told that all of the wave, all four of the figures in the page puncher wave, the Batman, the Superman, and the Black Adam, have all got exactly the same issue of the comic book, which is one of those pros and cons thing, because for someone like me who's only buying one of the figures, yeah, great, I've got the story to read, but if you were collecting the whole wave, then you might feel a bit disappointed, a bit hard done by. I don't know, give your spares to your mates or something. That's all I got for you. So, yeah, aesthetic-wise, I feel like I don't have much choice but to dish out another thumbs up here. It's not quite as expansive as I would have liked it to be, but they very rarely are with the action figures. And what we do get, the little occult spell book, the swappable hand, foot stand, always useful, the foot stands, the trading card, the comic book, a little bit of extra added value there, works out. They're all very much in line with the narrative of the character, of what we understand about who he is, what his powers are, what part he has to play in the DC universe. So it's working, and it opens up a few options, as you can see, as to how you might want to pose him up. So yeah, thumbs up. Would I like more? Of course I would. I always want more added value, but I can't fault this one bit. Just for a bit of comparison here as well, then, we've got the John Constantine figure with the aforementioned Batman, the Detective Comics 1000 in the blue and grey edition there. You can see they're about the same height, although Batman's kind of physique is obviously a bit more muscular by comparison there. But yeah, both looking pretty decent, although I've just noticed my Batman's been on the shelf and I've obviously not dusted his foot standing in a while. And here is Constantine with another addition to the McFarlane Toys collection that I've made this year, the Multiverse Lobo there. And you can see, obviously, that he is a much bulkier, much more intimidating physical presence, a bit taller by comparison as well. Not really two characters you'd find encountering each other, I suppose, as much as you might find Batman and Constantine working together, but as I mentioned at the top of the video, I'm very selective about which McFarlane Toys figures I pick up, so that's what you're getting. Well, here we are then, folks. Here's John going around on the turntable in the pose that I've had him on my shelf in. As mentioned earlier, hanging out with Batman primarily, and I'm going for a MoDXtra recommends with this one. I'm, broadly speaking, just a little bit more down on McFarlane Toys than I am on Hasbro. I don't know why that is. I can't fully articulate or explain why that is. I think there's just been a little bit too much of a trend with the DC comic stuff to go for the more obscure, more gritty, more grimdark looking stuff that's kind of more in line with what Todd does with, you know, his Spawn line and books he's drawn and written for. But when they produce something that's comic accurate like this, much like with the Lobo that I had out for comparison earlier, then I'm a very happy chappy. It's a lovely display piece. I'd probably say if you're looking for something more posable to take photos with, then perhaps this isn't the guy for you. But as a display piece, he's really hitting the mark for me, and I've been very happy with him, and I've enjoyed having him out on the display, really expanding the presence of DC, which is a must in this house, because the grand irony of this is, of course, the fact that I'm a bigger DC fan than I am a Marvel fan, all told. So I'm, building up a larger Marvel collection than a DC collection, which maybe says something about my thoughts and feelings on the figures. So yeah, comic book accurate, decent articulation, enough to get him into a nice, good-looking pose. What more could you ask for? He's doing it. So there we go. Okay, folks, well, once again, just a quick thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel in recent months. I'm very grateful that you've chosen MoDXtra Games and Collectibles and my little channel about my life and times as an enormous man-child filling my house with plastic. It is my absolute pleasure and honour to have you here as my subscriber. But if you're not already subscribed, then please do take a moment to go and hit the subscribe button. And while you're down there, give us a thumbs up, like if you've enjoyed the review, and drop a few notes in the comments down below. I've been Chris, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so very much for watching.